Hey everybody, it's Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And hopefully you know by now that we have started our subscription-based model where we have original content, bonus content, get invites to special events. So right now it's $2.99 a month, and as of January 1st, 2025, it's going to go up to $19.99 a month. So go to edupexperience.com, edupexperience.com, look for subscribe now to lock in that lifetime EdUp Experience founders rate. $2.99 a month, edupexperience.com. Look for subscribe.
Now listen up.
Because Insights EDU 2025 is coming, and this is the conference you don't want to miss. Meet us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for one of our favorite higher education marketing and enrollment management events of the year. Imagine 3 days packed with actionable insights and the latest innovations in higher ed. We're talking top industry experts, real-world case studies, and hands-on workshops designed to help you grow your programs, boost engagement, and elevate your student experience. This is your chance to hear the latest higher ed trends from speakers at Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and schools across the country. Mark your calendars, get your team, and get ready to welcome the era of the modern learner at Insights EDU 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com and secure your spot. We'll see you there.
Attention.
Registration is now open for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education 2024 Annual Conference, Protecting the Future, Champions for Higher Education, December 11th through 13th, 2024 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Don't miss out. Register today at msche.org/annual-conference or head to msche.org and click on the conference link. I'll see you there. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you for another episode, and I'll keep coming back forever because I like doing this, and there's so many people that I still have to talk to. But I do want to take a moment to thank you, our amazing audience. We had a goal this year to pass 400,000 organic plays of the EdUp Experience podcast, and we did achieve that in the month of October. And you'll hear this episode about 3 weeks from now, but there was a lot of celebration. And by a lot of celebration, I mean me and co-founder of the EdUp Experience, Elvin Freitas, basically just texting each other about how excited we were. That was really the only celebration. There wasn't anything besides that. I might have had a cocktail to celebrate. I don't know if Elvin did. But this has been hard work and important work, we think, an important body of work. And we started interviewing college and university presidents and those in higher ed in January of 2020. So we cataloged COVID. We've seen the dip and resurgence of HBCUs. We've seen the resurgence of tribal colleges and universities. We've talked about student success, the challenges, retention and persistence in all of these areas. And now, and FAFSA, we talked about FAFSA too. So, that makes everybody's back start to sweat when you start bringing that up. But we're out of that now, we think. And we're entering sort of a clean year. Department of Ed is saying FAFSA is going to work. It's going to be great. And now all of us are looking at what's the future look like? And so we've got to bring visionaries to the mic. I have a visionary co-host with me. You know her by her voice. And you know her because she's co-hosted with me a bunch of times, and she's definitely not going to give away the name of the guest today, even though she did that last time. Ladies and gentlemen, she's Laura Ibsen. She's CEO at Ellucian, where I also work. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this guest today, and also the series that Ellucian is sponsoring and co-hosting with you. Couldn't be more excited for our guest today.
Yeah, and I take the opportunity to give you give you a hard time as possible.
I know you
because
do.
I run this podcast, but then in my actual professional life, I can't give you any flack because you just would can me. You know what I mean? So
no way, you're awesome, Joe. You know that. We're lucky to have you.
Well, somebody that's as awesome as we are, probably more awesome, is our guest today. He's, needless to say, doing incredible work. You've probably heard his name before when it comes to what's happening in the realm of colleges and universities, the political sphere, and today's HBCUs, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Tony Allen. He's the president, Delaware State University. Welcome to the mic, Doc. How are you?
Hey, Joe. Hey, Laura. Good to be with you.
We're excited to have you here, my friend. And, you know, we always like to kind of level set for the audience is, you know, assume somebody is here, maybe doesn't know Delaware State, hasn't heard of it. Talk about Delaware State, who you serve and how you serve them.
Yeah, well, thank you first for being here. It's a real honor. And I know Laura helped make this happen. So Laura, thanks to you. Delaware State's 133 years old. It is a historically Black college and university, and also an 1890 land grant, of which there are 19 HBCU 1890 land grants. We have about 6,400 students from about 23 different countries. That includes 4 academic colleges and an early college school where we serve 7th through 12th graders, upwards of about 600, who are able to accumulate about 60 college credits before they're ever admitted into any university. We believe, quite frankly, that our North Star is to be the most substantively diverse, contemporary, and unapologetic HBCU in the country, and have fought for many years to make sure that that's happening in real time. The other thing I think you know, Joe, is I'm the chair of the White House Advisory Board on HBCUs under the Biden administration, and I'm proud of that role as well. But have done a lot of homework with respect to our place in the higher education space, and I earnestly believe that HBCUs writ large, the 101 of us, are the best return on investment in higher education.
Amazing.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like the clarity and crystallization in the way you talk about your institution and what you're doing. I'm going to take a left turn on you. This is where we go. So tell us about the work, but of course I go right to the strategic plan, and I start looking at how college and university presidents and their teams craft strategic plans. And I got to say, I like yours a lot, because I went in there and there's metrics, and they're green and they're red, and it's telling me, and I'm going, wow, this is very transparent. And of course, because of my background, I go right to the student success one. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the data, and I'm just fascinated, because it allows me to dig into what you're doing. And transparency is really key, I think, as you grow an institution, as you try to achieve these goals and really to hit that vision that you're talking about. Can you maybe just give us a little insight in why you added so many data points in your strategic plan? Because a lot of times presidents don't do that.
Well, I'm a recovering banker. I spent 15 years at Bank of America and its predecessor, MBNA. Before that, I did some stuff in government and nonprofit, but that 15 years really got me connected to what I am doing now, particularly as it relates to measurements. And there's an old saying, what gets measured gets attended to, what gets attended to gets done. So as we prepared for what we call Reach 2026, that's our strategic plan, we just thought about who we want to be and what that means for our students. There are 5 key pillars. I won't go into them. What I would say is we believe we're a 10,000 person university. Today we're at 6,400. We believe that our students deserve to have real world experiences while they're in school that set them up for the moment that they actually enter the workplace. We have a renewed and in some ways new commitment to operational effectiveness and customer service, which we think is important in the higher ed space, regardless if you're an HBCU, a PWI, or MSI. I think all of us can commit very differently to how we exercise customer service. And we recognize the realities that we're a low resource organization, that our infrastructure oftentimes does not match some of our sister institutions. So we are taking the high ground and making sure that folks understand our value. And I'm really talking about the state and other philanthropic partners. We're getting paid for that value, and they understand what they're getting as a result, which I believe is a high quality student with grit that wants to change the trajectory for themselves, their families, and their communities. I have countless stories about how that happens. But if you believe in higher education access for all, then you believe in organizations like Delaware State University.
Tell them like it is.
I also have a strategic plan, which is when I co-host with Laura Ipson, I give her the microphone as soon as possible. Laura, over to you.
Oh, wow, Joe, that was really fast this time.
I like to keep you on your toes, Laura.
I'm curious when you talked about the strategic plan and the metrics and across higher education, How do you see it's sometimes like awkward to say you got to look at higher education, look at the business side too. Do you see higher education transforming? Certainly, we see the disruption online, what happened in COVID, that there are more leaders like you setting metrics against their plans, being measured on that, and actually being rewarded based on that as well. And how do you view that and the impact that leaders like you, Tony, can have in higher education if we really hold all of ourselves accountable to the success of our students?
It's a great question, Laura. What I would say is, and this is how I characterize it to my team, it's a family business. So the richness of historically Black colleges and universities come down to creating institutions out of nothing to create unique opportunities for students who are either literally locked out of the system or underserved by it. So there is a historical cultural richness to it. But as you evolve, you want to be able to have the right metrics for what success looks like going forward, particularly as it gets more competitive. And what I have said as I've gone into the space is that we were undervaluing the quality and product of Delaware State University. And instead of talking about all of our assets, too often we were talking about more of our deficiencies. So in order to talk about your assets, you're going to have to figure out really what they are, how they can be measured, and what that means in the marketplace for those students, their families, and the folks who will hire them going forward. So I've had a unique view at Delaware State because I grew up in Delaware. So I watched Delaware State from afar. I didn't attend here, but I watched it from afar. And I always thought it was a hidden gem. So by the time I got here and said, the problem is we're a hidden gem. So being able to capture real value, I think is important. One factoid we have is that 86% of our graduates 6 months after graduation are either in the field of their discipline or in graduate school. We want to increase that to 94%. And that's important for lots of reasons, that we want to be able to say, if you come and get a Delaware State education in your field of interest, then you're actually going to have a great career and a long-term trajectory over time. The other thing I'd say is, we take bigger chances than a lot of our sister institutions relative to who we admit into the university. And that's good for us, because my sense is if you're coming from a low resource background and you might not have all the advantages of a more middle-class setting while you were growing up, coming to Delaware State is going to give you quality education, but also give you a mindset and a cultural framework for how you should think about the world and how you should enter the world as a citizen as well. So it is not a vocation, it's an avocation for all of us. And in so doing, I think we're going to make a great impact, not just at Delaware State, but across the HBCU community.
Wonderful.
I got a quick follow-up, Laura, if you don't mind, just because I don't want to leave that point.
Okay.
And then I'll pass it back to you. But you talked about undervaluing. You talked about being a hidden gem. And I go back to when I started this podcast and I was interviewing HBCU presidents, and that at that time, 2020, 2021, so much of what was being written and talked about regarding HBCUs is closures. They're not going to make it. Under-researched, it's not going to happen. And then you see this. I mean, I don't know if it was a consequence of COVID. You see students, Black students who go, you know what, I do want to consider an HBCU. Maybe I feel better there. I feel like I belong. We see philanthropy come in, and coming all the way back around to your point of access. If you have more students looking at HBCUs, they have to go somewhere. They have to, so you have to open up access if you want to serve more students. I think that's a really key designation that can't go overstated. Like we have to keep talking about access if we want to serve all the students that want to be served, right?
Hey, Joe, let me give you, it's a great point. Let me give you a good example. So COVID, like the rest of us, we sent all of our students home, except for 200. Think of those 200 as otherwise homeless without Delaware State. So it was our responsibility to try to get our kids back in school as soon as possible, because we thought those 200 were a proxy for many more who were going home in situations where they were a senior getting ready to graduate to now becoming the main breadwinner. Really significant circumstances. So we teamed up with a place called Test for America, which was a group of scientists and actually business folks who wanted to get schools like ours back up and running. So we sent most of our students home in March. We got them back in July. because Testing for American and Delaware State decided that we were going to test our faculty, staff, and students 3 times a week for as long as the pandemic would occur. And as you know, that went on for a long time. We did upwards of 100,000 tests. We kept a 0.05 positivity rate, one of the best in the nation. And more importantly, we got our students back into not only the learning environment, but the place they call their second home. In the middle of all of that, there was a school down the street from us, literally a mile and a half down the street from us, called Wesley College, that was going out of business. And we saw a unique opportunity to work with them. It took us 2 years, but we acquired that college. We were the first HBCU to ever acquire another institution. And we did it with the thought that we could build our capacity based on our strategic direction. Those students, in many ways, looked like our students, and I don't mean just racially, but their economic background and those sorts of things. And then that particular college was literally in between a very, very well-heeled community and one of the poorest communities in Delaware. And we wanted to say to one of the poor communities in Delaware, many of families and students that look like our students, that there's a chance for you, there's an oasis for you right here. And I'm proud to say that when Wesley closed, they had about 400 faculty, staff, and students on campus. Today we have 2,500 faculty, staff, and students on campus. And I think our building capacity, particularly in health sciences, for a whole new generation of experts that not only will deal in the health discipline space, but also understand their commitment to the world around them.
Outstanding. Love that. Love it. Love the acquisition. I lived in that world too. Anyway, Laura, I'll pass it over to you, but that's so cool to be the first HBC to acquire another school. It's awesome.
No, it's exciting as you build your momentum for R1 status. Super exciting. You know, when we last talked, Tony, you're such a leader for the vision and future for all of the HBCUs. I'm wondering if you'd share your thought about how you're building community, helping infrastructure, the EHBCU, preservation, and what's going to be important in bringing more of the HBCUs together, especially now when we're also looking at the impacts that we're seeing, whether it's business or in higher education, of innovations like artificial intelligence. Like there's a moment, and you have such a vision for the future, way beyond Delaware State, where you're doing an amazing job. What does that look like for you?
Laura, it's a great question. Let me just point you back to my own experience. So I went to University of Delaware, big PWI. And the reason I got exposed to an HBCU is because I wanted to work for the Upward Bound program, a TRIO program out of the federal government. University of Delaware had one. Lincoln University, which is 15 minutes up the street from University of Delaware, also had one. And I was too young to work for the one at University of Delaware. So I worked at Lincoln. I worked for Lincoln my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior. That's how much I began to love Lincoln University and what I was seeing there, which was folks from every imaginable opportunity who looked like me, who had a certain expectation for me. All that kind of thing was rich. I say that to say that after 187 years, so we've been around for that long in the HBCU community, I think we don't talk enough about our influence in the broader American society. So UNCF has a report out now that says the number one factor for a low resource African-American student actually getting into the American middle class is their attendance at an HBCU today.
Wow.
And I told you, we punch significantly above our weight. We're 3% of all college and universities in the country. We're still producing about 20% of all Black graduates. And we have to start talking about that. My notion about this hidden gem not being the hidden gem anymore. You know this. I talk to a lot of C-suite executives. Oftentimes when they're talking about Black talent, they'll say, Tony, we'd love to have a diverse talent pipeline, but we don't know where to look. And I always tell them, that's because you're not looking hard enough. HBCUs are producing 325,000 talented Black students from lots of disciplines every year. So it really is about engaging. So what does that mean for the future? Joe Biden started his first Senate campaign on the campus of Delaware State University. I worked for Joe Biden a long time ago when he was a senator. I know his heart.
Wrote his speeches.
I did. And when he became president, he had a couple of goals. But as you know, when he talks about this, he talks about building the American middle class. And he saw HBCUs as central to that. So when he named me to the White House Initiative on HBCUs, which has been around since 1978, by the way, he and I had a conversation about the seriousness of how we would approach the topic. Here's the good news. Joe Biden has literally infused the HBCU community with $17 billion in the last almost 4 years, more than any other president in American history. Is it enough? No. Does he know it's not enough? Yes. So it really is about making sure that we are not only infusing those dollars, but put them in the right places. And I'll hush up in 1 second. So at the President's Board of Advisors, we have 4 initiatives. One is technological and physical infrastructure. We already know we provide quality education. Our living and learning spaces have to match that quality education. And as you know, particularly in your business, you got to meet students where they are, and they're in a much different place they are today than they were 20, 40, 60 years ago, particularly as it relates to technological import. So we have that as one big pillar for us. The other one is research and contracting opportunities. We believe that we are significant research centers of excellence, and we want to get our fair share of the federal contracts in that regard. The other one is connected pathways, which is to say, I literally tell all of our business that do business with us, don't come to Delaware State looking for what you think is the cream of the crop in their rising junior, rising senior year. If you really want to build diverse talent pipelines, you got to start with us from the beginning. Now, the beginning for us now is 7th grade, which is a unique opportunity for folks to stay with us throughout their time at the university. And the last one is HBCU preservation and growth, which I think goes to both you and Joe's point. There has been some consolidation in higher ed overall. My sense of that with the HBCU community is we have a unique opportunity to do things better together. If we looked at ourselves as a system, the 101 of us, we'd be the 7th biggest system in higher ed. But we don't often do that. And the more we're able to do that, we'll be able to create enormous economies of scale with companies like Ellucian. I believe we'll be able to actually educate and graduate more students from all different backgrounds and abilities. And we'll give voice in a way that I don't think we have given to the American economy in a long time. They need to know that $16 billion of gross domestic product every year comes from historically Black colleges and universities. They need to know about 325,000 graduates coming from historically Black colleges and universities. And we need to build capacity for a more diverse, talented future for all of us.
Absolutely. And Tony, we're super proud to be owned by Vista and have the leadership of Robert Smith, focused on the Student Freedom Initiative, the infrastructure investments. And we believe that infrastructure and those digital connections can bring the HBCUs together. Those are investments that must be made. It's a critical time. And in addition, working on intern programs like Robert's Intern XL, so that all of us as employers, Blackstone, our other owner our partner has pathways for diverse students. There is a pipeline. And I think connecting the HBCUs together with an infrastructure, digital, with transfer capabilities and rich opportunities to bring that pipeline forward more quickly is something that all of us as employers are looking for. And it's there. We just have to do a better job of connecting that with speed and intensity.
And you know what, Laura, and we've talked about this before. I think the business community, and particularly companies like Ellucian, you and Robert Smith, can be helpful in our business prospects. So oftentimes we have relationships that are either business to business vendor relationships, right? Or philanthropic relationships. I actually think we can do joint venture partnerships in a much different way than we've thought about before. You mentioned EHBCU. We're just in the early throes of that, but that is basically an opportunity for us to build a white label platform. We know that there's a lot of interest in the HBCU community from lots of different folks, many of whom either started at an HBCU and never finished, or want the HBCU experience, but don't think they can go through a traditional classroom. So eHBCU says, can we actually create a virtual platform that gives them those experiences? So you come to eHBCU and you want to go to FAMU or a North Carolina A&T or an Alabama State or a Delaware State, we can afford you that in a white label way and create unique opportunities for you to get your education, but also for revenue opportunities that we think will have significant import down the line. And the one factoid that we know is interesting about eHBCU, there are 500,000 Black online learners in the country.
Wow.
Only 20,000 of them get that online learning from a historically Black college university. And that is about capacity and infrastructure, to your point. So being able to partner with organizations like yours around those particular interests, I think grow us, give us the financial stability we need, and most importantly, get us to put degrees, earn degrees in the hands of people who continue to need them.
Well, that's exciting, and it's degrees. And I think the other thing that you offer, and that's exciting across the HBCUs, is the reskilling and knowing what skill sets you need. And we talked a little bit about the Ellucian journey and how we're connecting skills using AI directly to jobs. When you have a system in place, that will just provide immense opportunities to re-recruit amazing talent, make sure that they're ready for future jobs. So excited about that. But talking about AI, I know you're thinking a lot about it. What are from higher education? There's some fear, some anxiety, but also excitement around the data and predictive analytics. What's top of mind for Delaware State, and what are you hearing across the HBCUs on artificial intelligence?
It's so funny. I talked to the head of my faculty senate 2 days ago, and we were talking about this issue relative to fears among faculty and staff. And she said that we are already about the business of trying to allay those fears, which is to say, if you're not using AI, then what we're going to do is fall further behind from a pedagogy standpoint.
Artificial intelligence.
Oh, that's a joke. Okay, I had to figure out where that came from.
That was Samuel L. Jackson.
A new download.
To pay attention to artificial intelligence.
So it's really not about being scared about it. It's about how to effectively use it with integrity. And we know that that's going to be, that is, I shouldn't say it's the future. In many ways, it's now. So having partners where we can make sure that our faculty and staff have the tools they need to be successful. This is particularly from a pedagogical standpoint is important. And then making sure that our students understand the utility of it. It's not a quick fix. It can be helpful, but you have to do it in the right way to get the kind of efficiency and expertise that you need long term. From a broader HBCU perspective, I'd say probably from a broader higher ed perspective, we're probably slower in the higher education sector, than we should be on AI because of the nature of how we have gone through the syncretic method of teaching in this country. And just to be clear, that was well before AI. Yeah. I am always telling my faculty and students that in order for us to be contemporary, we have to make sure that we are literally providing real world skills for today and tomorrow. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always starting from a long history of how you've done things before. So I do believe that there'll be some opportunity for the entire higher education space. But as we have done for many years, HBCUs have been pretty nimble on this score. So we should be pretty far along as it relates to wanting that knowledge and finding partners that can provide it for us long term.
I think about practical applications of AI too, and Tony, you know this better than I do, but I know it through my interviews and my personal experiences that that retaining Black men in higher ed is a big challenge. It's been a challenge for about a year and a half as it started being kind of reported. And you think about, how can we, thinking about how to use AI, can we use artificial intelligence in some way to keep students more engaged, right? To keep them thinking more about higher education, to help them stay in higher ed, and figure out we, all of us in higher ed, have to figure out why this particular demographic is leaving higher education. Like, what is the catalyst where Black men say, you know what, I'm not either going to higher ed or I'm not staying? Can artificial intelligence help with predictive analytics? Can it help us solve this problem? Have you given that any thought? Because I've been thinking about that a lot. Because this seems like a really, really hard problem to solve, and nobody's come up with a really good solution yet to it.
Hey everybody, it's Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And hopefully you know by now that we have started our subscription-based model where we have original content, bonus content, get invites to special events. So right now it's $2.99 a month, and as of January 1st, 2025, it's going to go up to $19.99 a month. So go to edupexperience.com, edupexperience.com, look for subscribe now to lock in that lifetime EdUp Experience Founders rate. $2.99 a month, edupexperience.com, look for subscribe.
Attention.
Registration is now open for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education 2024 Annual Conference, Protecting the Future, Champions for Higher Education, December 11th through 13, 2024 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Don't miss out. Register today at msche.org/annual-conference. We'll see you there. Mark your calendars now for February 12th through 14th, because this is where we welcome the era of the modern learner and the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're headed to New Orleans for Insights EDU 2025. This year's event is packed with speakers from companies like Google, Meta, Reddit, and MIQ Digital, and schools across the country. Ready to learn how AI is transforming the marketing landscape and how to adapt your programs to the preferences and demands of the modern learner? Then Insights EDU 2025 is where you need to be. Register now at insightsedu.com.
I'll try to be quick on this point, but it's one I think about a lot. Academic disidentification, which I'm sure you all both know, is a broad term around when students stop thinking about academics so critically. That actually happens in the 6th, 7th grade. And if you don't have mitigants against those feelings, folks will go in different directions, regardless of where they come from, what they look like, or their family education. Well, if you're a more healed family, those mitigants are going to be clear, and they're going to make sure your parents and others are going to make sure in the community that you're connected to the right things that keep you focused on education. If you're not, then it's more likely that disidentification stays in place.
Yeah.
So first point, deeper talent pipeline. We cannot wait, particularly as it relates to Black men, for them to get to college. There are too many things that have happened already, many times in their experiences, that will disable them in that regard. So first is deeper talent pipeline. Second, to your point about what they're faced with, the predictive analytics I think can be really useful. So I'll give you my own journey. I just lost my biological father, who I just met 6 or 7 times. I didn't know him very well, but I have begun to know his story. And he was long-term drug addicted. He had been in and out of the prison system, but he was a really, really bright guy and wanted to pour into his kids, but couldn't because he was sick. So this notion of being able to predict what that would portend for me and my twin sisters would have been much more helpful and important as I even thought about college. I always tell this one example when I got a full academic scholarship to the University of Delaware, and I called my grandmother, his mother, and she said, "Oh, baby, that's great. What sport are you going to play?" So the first idea was the only way I'm getting to school is if I'm playing a sport. So changing that mindset, I think, is useful for us. And then, and you all both know this, once you have them in school, and this is all students, but particularly Black men, you have to have an intrusive advising model, which is to say, if there are indicators that suggest that they are not focused academically, whether that's what's happening at home, are they attending class, are there other experiences around them that are creating post-traumatic distress order, it'll be much more likely that you can intervene earlier, which actually may help them stay over a longer term. We can't just do that in an old advising model and hope that they have a great professor or a great advisor that is engaged with them. You know why? Because usually those folks have 200-300 students they got to watch after.
That's right.
That's
we
such a key point.
Go ahead.
And intrusive advising doesn't mean let's see how it goes for a couple more weeks and then we'll contact the student. It's this one missed assignment. It's this one missed class. It's this one event that the student didn't show up to when you thought they were going to be there. And an immediate intervention to say, are you good? Are you okay? And we know a lot of students aren't good and aren't okay. And there's a big difference between advising models and really an intrusive advising model. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Thank you.
So let me tell you one example here. I use this a lot. When I first came to Delaware State, I was provost, and immediately a guy came to my office when I was provost, probably a month into the job, and said he must see me. He told my executives he must see me, and my assistant said, "Dr. Allen has a lot of appointments today. He's not going to be able to see you." He said he needs to see me. I'll wait, and he waited. He waited for an hour. Finally, he gets into my office. He's quiet and shy. I said, "Young man, how can I help you?" Pressed him a little bit, probably 15 minutes. He finally said, "Dr. Allen, when you got here, my mentor from the Boys and Girls Club in Wilmington, Delaware, told me I had to come see you." I said, "Okay, young man, how can I help you?" He said, "Dr. Allen, I'm homeless." I said, "How long you been homeless?" He said, "Since I was a sophomore in high school." I said, "What year are you in at Delaware State?" He said, "I'm a sophomore at Delaware
That's insane.
State." Lauren Joe, just for a minute, think about what it takes for a sophomore in high school to think about college, apply to college, get into college, and then for another 2 years, never tell a soul about his plight.
That's some grit. You talked about grit. I mean, the
Exactly
amount of
right.
grit. Whew.
Exactly right. So, I, took him in right away, made sure he was housed, became my intern. This was years ago. You know what he does now? He is a inner city teacher in a Washington, D.C. public school. So you can change things, right? You can change things. But I think about that one issue. I got lucky. I need to be able to have tools to find them all the time across the space.
Find them and illuminate them. I mean, that's amazing.
That's right.
There's another big issue though, and we just did a student voice report with 1,500 students, and 78% of them said that financial stress negatively impacted their mental well-being. 60% of us considered dropping out. Almost that many are saying, I got to choose between my college expenses and basic needs. Students are homeless. There's a crisis around access to resources to go to school once they make a decision, stay in. And the stress on financial aid is severely impacting mental health. And I just would love to hear a little bit around what that, it looks like we may have lost it. There's Joe. Joe's dialing back in. What that, we'll back up. Joe, I think did we lose the recording?
You didn't. You kept recording that whole time,
okay.
Even though I cut out.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to ask Tony about the crisis of mental health, the financial issues. We hear December 1st for the FAFSA. Majority of all students have some sort of financial aid. What are your concerns and how are you managing through the crisis that we saw for first generation minority students on getting access to resources to be there, and the stress that they're going through with question marks on, will I have the money to stay in school?
It's a great question. I would say there are two things. One, and again, this is not just for Black students. I think we've had a mental health crisis in our country for young people for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
We just had COVID expose it in a different way, in my view. And we haven't been diligent about making sure that we've always had the right resources to support them that way. In the Black community, you probably heard this before, there's been a fear of saying, I have some mental health challenges. That's particularly true among Black men. So demystifying the fact that if you need help, you can find help has been important. Some of that relates to some of the things I think HBCUs do well, that we have usually student-led support groups that sometimes look like fraternities and sororities, sometimes look like other interest group areas that are effectively checking in with each other. Because I do think many times student-to-student, peer-to-peer support is the most critical. But you have to wrap around those services. So yes, do we have a counseling center on campus? Yes. Do we have a referral strategy on campus? Yes. But oftentimes a young man or woman just wants to talk in a very confidential way, they don't want to be seen walking to the counseling center, talking to somebody about either a big need or a small need. And so telehealth has been a really important new feature for Delaware State in particular. So you can pick up the phone in the comforts of your own residence hall, or if you're living at home, and have a conversation. That's really important, but we have much more work to do on that front. The fact that there were so many students that were at home for a year, sometimes 2 years during COVID when they were in high school and are now with us, suggested their ability to socially adapt is just not the same as it might have been with us. Your second point, which I think is an interesting point too, is the financial needs. So I think you know this, but upwards of about 90% of all HBCU students have some financial need. Two things I say to my students. One, we have to make sure that you understand all things that are available to you financially, which they don't often have. And I spent a lot of time with Thurgood Marshall College Fund. You'd be surprised how many scholarships are left on the table because students don't know, or we as a staff haven't suggested to them how to get into all of that stuff as well. And two, the small dollar amount sometimes that students need. To your point, I've had students say they couldn't stay in college because they couldn't find $500. Not $15,000, $500, and have stopped out as a result. So being able to understand really the volume and scale of what the need is. Sally Mae actually has a kind of a small dollar scholarship fund for juniors and seniors for just that point that I think is really important. But we as a faculty and staff have to make sure that they have the information readily available at their disposal, and we can keep them accountable too. At Delaware State, we actually have a thing called an Inspire Scholarship. So you have a 2.75 commitment to public service, graduating high school senior. The state of Delaware will pay for full tuition at Delaware State, full 4-year tuition. And it's working well, but it is still one of those things that is kind of a best kept secret. Why? Because guidance counselors aren't talking to folks about these unique opportunities that literally, Lori, as you know, could save a person's life. Could literally save a person's life.
Absolutely. We saw that during COVID, and I launched our Path Scholarship. We're close to $2 million of giving back, and we provide that to the institution. And oftentimes it's $250, $500 to keep them going, to bridge them. And people don't realize that much can make a difference to keeping a student on track or dropping out. And there's so many scholarships out there that students leave that money on the table. You know our capability to take Scholarship Universe and AI. We match students to over 100,000 scholarships in 30 seconds. So, you can't search around for all that. You've got to find the opportunity and make it fast and accessible for all students. And I think these are the types of things that digital capabilities and AI will illuminate quickly with confidence, so students know that they have access to resources, mental health counseling, whatever they need to persist.
Leave no stone unturned is what I would say. And
100%.
I have 3 kids under the age of 18. They are just consuming information in a much different way.
Oh, yeah.
Their brains are just faster, Tony. Like, let's just face it.
We got to meet them where they are. We just have to. So.
It started with like TikTok videos and, swiping and this. Now we're down to the point where my daughter who's 10, if she can't skip the intro on the Netflix show she's going to watch, that's a problem. Like she just wants to skip the whole minute-long intro. That's where our kids are going these days. But I do want to just note one quick thing. I remember talking Andrea Horton from Thurgood Marshall Foundation, Chief Marketing Officer there, and they have the same, like they just want to let people know it exists. So it's the same, it's these hidden, not marketed scholarships that are available to students. And to your point, Tony, the $500, it's not that the student can't pay it. It's that they go, I've got to take this $500 I was going to spend on school and I've got to move it over here. So I've got to quit school. I can't go anymore. It's that feeling of hopelessness because they have something take place, this bill, this cell phone bill they didn't expect, or the car fender bender they didn't expect. And it's a feeling of hopelessness. Sometimes it's the dollar amount, but a lot of times it's school becomes this thing I was choosing to do that I don't have to do. I have to then pay this bill. And so my focus is now moved. And it's making students move their life around school instead of moving school around their life. That is the context of good retention. I get passionate about that.
I would say too, and I'm sure you guys are working on it, the aggregation of some of these associations like Thurgood Marshall College Fund and United Negro College Fund, we're a TMCF school, so they have 47 public HBCUs, and I know Harry Williams was one of my dearest friends. The ability for companies like Aleutian to work directly with them to make it easy for the member schools and their students, I think is critical. I really do. It's hard to take us, as the Lord well knows, it's hard to take us one by one. This goes to my notion about treating us like a system as opposed to a sector. But if you could figure out a way to build capacity to scale across the space with the push of a button, I think that's the next frontier. And I think it's going to be critical for how we serve our students.
Well, and certainly your focus on infrastructure and building community, it will be critical to achieve that vision that you've had on the system capabilities, despite not being a formalized system. So we're excited to be a good partner for you there as well. I'm kind of looking ahead. I know Joe's going to say our clock is running out a bit, but there's this little thing called an election, and you've been such an incredible leader on policy and success in the Biden administration for the HBCU community. What's your views ahead, and what are you hoping that we can achieve, no matter where the election goes, and what are some of the risks that would be out there for you?
Well, here's the good news. The HBCU community, in my experience, has been a very bipartisan effort. It's very important to note that. A lot of that just has to do with location. These schools are in many places that don't have an affinity as it relates to Democrats or Republicans. So they both have to play. And in those spaces, I believe those elected officials understand the return on investment for these schools. That's good news. I would argue that the chief champion for that is a woman named Congresswoman Alma Adams from North Carolina. But I will tell you that in both houses, in the Congress and the Senate, there is a caucus on HBCUs. And they have a Republican and a Democrat in each case. Alma Adams and French Hill in the Congress. In the House, and Chris Coons, who's soon to be the senior senator in Delaware, and Tim Scott from South Carolina in the Senate. So that's the good news, that folks don't see this as a partisan issue. What I would also say is the way the Biden and Harris administration have elevated the HBCU profile has been significant. So not only did he afford us the $17 billion of infused capital, he also appointed more HBCU grads as an administration than anybody else, including, obviously, his vice presidential running mate, who I think represents us very well. What I would say for the future, though, is that we, meaning the HBCU community, have to tell our story more collectively. I've been talking about this since George Floyd. Are we in a moment? Or are we going to build a movement? Wow. And I think there's a unique opportunity for us to build the HBCU community, to build a movement, and not just by ourselves, with organizations like Aleutian, with people like Laura Ispin and Robert Smith. These things are important, that we have lots of voices surrounding exactly what we do, who we are, and what that means for the American middle class. I always say, if you have a strong American middle class, that means you have a middle class representative of our entire country. I do have some worries, quite frankly, Laura. I think you probably know what they are relative to the White House itself. But I believe that regardless of the outcome of the election, the nature and need of the HBC communities just won't go away. And I say that because we've been here before. We have seen large swings, but what we haven't done, I think, is told our story in a collective way that helps suggest that you get great value from us. You need to invest in us, and we will produce people, institutions, and systems that will continue to change the face of the American democracy.
100%. And Tony, you know, we believe so much in the HBCU and the mission. We support 73%. We know there's an opportunity to have a system, powerful new future for all the HBCUs and focus on that preservation and opportunity and access for all. So, you know, count us in to be part of that team in the future, no matter what. We just love your leadership and what we can all do together, make a difference.
I would just say, and I don't mean this because you're sitting here, I believe Aleutian is one of 3 chief change agents from a corporate perspective on that score. So just know that we look at you that way. We're counting on you to continue to be extraordinary partners for us for the future.
I'll back that up because there isn't a meeting that goes by where Laura doesn't go, we need to talk about the HBCUs here. I mean, it is basically in every meeting, and it was refreshing to see that in my time with Lucien too.
You know, do you have enough time? I will tell you this. When I was a banker, I was at Bank of America, and I ran the corporate I started and ran the corporate reputation group. And our chief metric was, when will our clients and customers know we've changed? And I talked to a lot of influencers, customers, and clients. It was an analytical framework we developed. And there were 3 outcomes. They'll know you've changed when you do what you say you're going to do. Value proposition. We all know that kind of table stakes. They know you've changed when you're actually using your significant subject matter expertise for the benefit of the broader community. So not just philanthropically, but actually using it for the benefit of the broader community. And the third point was they know you've changed when you look up and down that company and it looks like the customers and clients you serve. To me, that's solution. And the more folks we can find, it's systems and institutions we can find like that, the better off we're all going to be.
Couldn't agree more. And I love how you shared that, how you view how you're viewed by others and holding yourselves to those types of standards. That's just fantastic.
Tony, we want to give you the last couple of questions. We're going to say this one's an open mic. It's not really a question, I guess, but what else do you want to say about Delaware State that we haven't talked about? Is there anything you want to point out, any new initiative you have, any you want to love on your staff, love on your team? I'm putting kind of words in your mouth, but anything else you want to say about Delaware State? And then we'll ask you the final question.
Yeah, so I just is maybe it's not a humble brag, maybe it's just a brag. But it goes to how the breadth and scope of our programs. So among the great number of programs we have at the university, we have an aviation program that's been around since 1986, have a fleet of 25 planes. We actually produce more pilots of color than any other place in the country, which
that's
is
awesome.
And we're the high quality, low cost provider east of the Mississippi. And I guess that was Tuesday, we just named one of our planes after a famed Tuskegee airman, which is kind of how the Delaware State program all began. So I just say that to say, when you're looking at HBCUs, the breadth and scope of who we are is so broad. It is very, very broad. And we are better together when we look at it that way. And then the final thing I'd say is, what I get to be is the chief cheerleader. Without a committed faculty and staff, many of whom have been around for a long, long time, and some of whom are just coming into the family. Without that, you can't build the right culture, the right framework, and get the right metrics you want for these students to be successful. So I'm grateful that I get this opportunity to be the chief cheerleader, but it's really my team that gets the job done every day.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
I can say more about that. And Tony, we are inspired by your leadership every day. And this is just such an amazing opportunity to hear your vision and strategy for the future of not just Delaware State, but the HBCUs and what that means for the country and the value of that community and how we work together to unlock learning for all Americans.
Well, and Laura said future. So, crystal ball, my friend, what do you see for the future of higher education?
We'll be quicker and more nimble. This is higher ed overall. We will get more closely aligned with the ability to look around the corner for the future, and we'll combine our resources in a different way than we have before to meet the needs of a changing society. But at bottom, we will still be the basis for growing the capabilities, experience, and I'd say thematic cultural forces that have shaped this country for a long time. Higher ed is not going away. And the more we're able to open it up for more folks, the better country we will be, which will continue to be the rival of the world.
I love giving the mic to people that sing the praises of higher ed, because it's like I hear all this garbage out there about higher ed's losing its value and the lack of confidence, and that may be true to some degree, but it's not going anywhere. And the more we buy into that narrative that the degree and the system's lost value, we're creating our own problem. We sing our praises, it turns around. So right. I love that, Tony. Thank you so much. And I hope you had a good time here, too, talking about Delaware State.
I did. I liked all the sounds. That was fantastic.
Well, you were doing so good, I didn't even hit half of them. So we'll have to have you back, and I'll really show you what's up with the sound effect board.
Yeah, I was waiting for some big bangs there, Joe. Some of your new stuff. Come on, unleash it.
Lunacy.
It's crazy over here. All I can tell you is that if you don't like this episode, I don't know what to tell you. This is as good as I can put people together. My guest co-host and amazing leader, Laura Ipson, CEO of Ellucian. So much respect for you. Love working for you and love working at Ellucian. But I also love the EdUp Experience podcast because I get to talk to people like this gentleman right here, the good doctor, Tony Allen, president of Delaware State University. My friend, it has been an absolute honor. Thank you for your time. We'll stay in touch, no doubt about that.
God bless you both.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Hey everybody, it's Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And hopefully you know by now that we have started our subscription-based model where we have original content, bonus content, get invites to special events. So right now it's $2.99 a month, and as of January 1st, 2025, it's going to go up to $19.99 a month. So go to edupexperience.com, edupexperience.com, look for subscribe now to lock in that lifetime EdUp Experience founders rate. $2.99 a month, edupexperience.com, look for subscribe.
Higher ed leaders, ready to level up your marketing and enrollment strategy? Join us at Insights EDU February 12th through 14th in New Orleans. The ultimate higher education marketing and enrollment management conference is here. Take advantage of early bird prices until December 12th. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Attention.
Registration is now open for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education 2024 Annual Conference, Protecting the Future, Champions for Higher Education. December 11th through 13th, 2024 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Don't miss out. Register today at msche.org/annual-conference or head to msche.org and click on the conference link. I'll see you there.